Welcome to the Uncredible Podcast. I'm Jeremy, and I'm Uncredible. This week on the Substack, we have our first article was Becoming Winter Beast. Now, this is kind of an update, a conclusion, so to speak, to the Strava group that I launched back in, I think I launched it in November. I was looking for a way to motivate myself to get back to running through the winter. When I first started my weight loss journey, I committed, I think I started this back, I don't remember the year specifically, but I said to myself, I'm just going to go walk a mile. And I think it was in December, I want to say 2021, 2020, somewhere in there. And I was like, I am going to commit to walking every single day. I'm going to log the miles. No matter what, I'm just going to do it. And it started out as a mile, and then it turned into 2 miles and 3 miles, and it kind of went from there, and now it's turned into this full-blown running thing. Well, last winter, my treadmill was kind of, it's not broken, but it makes a lot of weird noises that make you go, man, if that were to go, whatever that is, I don't know what the noise is, but if that were to go bad in the middle of a run, it could be bad. So to put it simply, I wear earbuds when I run, even on the treadmill, and one day, all of a sudden, I could actually hear the grinding of the treadmill. Now, I've used it since. I actually think what was causing some of that was I was using elevation, and I got away from using that elevation. So it doesn't seem to be affecting it as much. I keep it at 1% right now. But so Becoming Winter Beasts is, I started this Winter Beast Challenge back in November, invited a bunch of people, ended up only getting like 8 other people to join the Strava group. But it went really well. It was nice having a small group of people involved with it. And, you know, we all had our ups and downs. Read the article. It's a good article. But everybody at some point got to the point where they were just over the whole process of running in the winter. And I talk about in the article, it's not just the cold, you know, it's the whole bundling up, washing the clothes, trudging through the snow, drying out your shoes. It's all of that just becomes tedious day after day after day, and then it turns into months. But the actual challenge was to log 100 freezing cold miles every month, December, January, and February. And for the most part, we did that. Not all those miles, I don't think, were by anybody were run outdoors. A lot of them were, but a lot of us ended up heading to the treadmill at some point. So we logged, I think it was like 2,400 miles as a team, if you will. There were 9 of us in that Winter Beast Challenge. All the statistics are on that article, and that was this past Wednesday. Thursday, I forgot to share this article on the socials. I'm probably going to do that today, later on, after I record the podcast and get this all edited. But our throwback article was the death of everyday tech. And I wrote an article, I did a throwback article a couple weeks ago. It might have been last week. I'm losing track of where these articles are landing now. But talking about technology that I saw disappear in my lifetime. And then this article sort of jumps on that and sort of dovetails off of it and talks about technology that we are used to using. The weird thing about this is I'm actually looking at some of it. But technology that's just like everywhere right now that we just depend on. Cell phones, laptops. I don't know if this is on camera, but I've got a VCR here. But this is something that's gone away. I got a PS5 over here. These are things that maybe not in my lifetime, but in my son's lifetime, he's going to look back at his children and go, oh yeah, we had cell phones and cameras, and those won't be things anymore. I don't know how that's going to look in the future, but that article, The Death of Everyday Tech, kind of discusses like this trajectory of technology and the advancement of AI and where things are going to go. I think I talk a little bit about transportation too, and how I think transportation might change down the road as well. Looking to next week, again, this is the Substack. You get to this at uncredible.me. Next week, we have People in Charge Aren't Inspiring. And just kind of occurred to me about a couple weeks ago that the people that I can look to, that I can say inspire me. They're not the people that are given the roles that you would expect to get them. I look at the people who are, quote, in charge. And this might just be my perspective, but those are not the people that I look up to. I'm not inspired by them. And so that article kind of looks at the uninspiring nature of how an entrepreneur, for example, might start a major company. And that person might be an incredible leader, a visionary, and somebody you'd want to emulate and follow. Their work ethic might be, way up here. And it might be somebody that you really want to aspire to be, and they might inspire you to be something better. And then something happens where those people can't seem to give. It doesn't happen immediately, but they can't seem to hand off that passion, that desire, and that inspiration to the next person who runs their company. And then you find yourself, like, as a regular employee, as an uncredible guy, just working an everyday job, you find yourself looking at people who they're not inspired by the job that they do. They just do it. They just maintain. And they're not visionaries. They don't look to change or improve anything around them. They just want to collect a paycheck, maybe enjoy the social aspect of being in leadership, rubbing shoulders with people and evaluating them. Some might really enjoy the fact that they are in charge. Some might do it because they get more vacation time, whatever it is. Maybe they like being in the forefront. Those are all reasons why people might do it, but it's not that entrepreneurial spirit that says, I want to take a risk and I want to work hard and I want to create something and build something. It's somewhere along the way that sort of falls apart. And if somebody else who doesn't come along and embrace the vision of whatever that thing might be, you end up with, like, leaders. I call them managers, assistant managers. You end up with all these people who they're uninspiring. They're just doing their job, and there's no passion, there's no fire, there's no desire to improve. And for regular people who see things that can be better or change, it can be very frustrating because their desire to just keep the status quo, just to keep things even keel, don't want to shine any light on anything, don't want to admit any mistakes. We just want to just get through another day, get another paycheck. The people who come along and are like, hey, we could improve this. This could be better. We could change this. They're like, hold on, buddy. Let's not get crazy with all the work. So that article's coming next week. That'll be next Thursday. People in charge aren't inspiring. And then our next throwback article, which will be next week. This is one of my pet peeves. I wrote this, I think it was just over a year ago. Are you blocking the entire aisle? Now, it had a different name when I published it the first time, but I'm at a point, it's got to be age related, where I'm starting to notice things in society, in the world around me. And instead of just being a participant in society, I'm starting to go, why did that person just do that? Or what was that person thinking over there when they chose? Let me give you a better example. Not just in society, but like when you're young and you're watching a movie on TV or you're watching it on the big screen. I don't know. Do people go to the movies anymore? I don't know. But when you're watching a movie, you're captured by the story or a particular actor or an action scene or something, you're kind of caught up in the fiction. You're like, wow, this is amazing. Now that I'm getting older, I'll be like, hey, did you see that computer in the background running Windows 95? Like, these are the kind of dumb things that I'm like watching the peripherals. And again, that might just be my perspective on things. But like, I find myself when I'm in, like I can't just go shopping and pick up the groceries I need and go home. I'll go in and I'll when I go to park, for example, we'll go to park and you watch somebody else like choose their parking spot or pull out of a parking spot and stop halfway. And you're looking around and you're going, why? Why did you do that? So all this to say, this throwback article next week called "Are You Blocking the Entire Aisle?" I started to notice that there's certain people who, and this is both workers frustrate me more than employees. I'll get to that in a minute. But there's certain people who, when they're shopping, they'll follow like road rules where you stay to the right when you're going down an aisle, right? And so the people going this way are on the right, and then we can kind of go back and forth. We have two ways of traffic, so to speak. Not that it's a road, but that's kind of the way people operate. But then there's this weird thing where if you go down an aisle and you're on the right, and the item that you want is on the other side of the aisle, people, and it's not an item you want, you're shopping for an item, and so you have to go look. This is where it gets really problematic. You walk, you go halfway down the aisle, you park your cart, you turn, and you cross the aisle. And at this moment, what you've done is you've left your cart on the right, and you are now standing on the left, blocking the entire aisle. And for those of us who are like kind of following societal understood rules of like stay to the right, stay to the left, we're just, if you're there for a quick grab, you go down that aisle, you stay to the right, you come up to this person. They are in their own world shopping for, cumin, and they're going through all the spice racks while their cart is in the way. And in that article, I discuss like, what is the thought process here? Like why is this person doing it the way that they're doing it? I don't fully understand it. Maybe if you do this, it might be completely unconscious. And I that's what I've come to. A lot of these things that frustrate me, that I see, and I'm just like, what is that? Like, I think it's just completely unconscious. The thing I need is over there. I don't need to bring the cart. It's right there. I'll just go over here. So they're just sort of in their own world. But man, I see it all the time. One I ran into just last night, and this reminds me of it, is when you go up to a Walmart, there are clear signs. Any store. I'm saying Walmart because that's where my experience is at. But if you go up to any store, there's usually two doors, an entrance and an exit. It's almost inevitably, and maybe this is just in my community, but I think pretty much anywhere in the U.S., the entrance is going to be on the left, and the exit's going to be on the right. Now, it might be switched, but there'll be stickers. You can follow the words. It's okay. Man, the habit of people to reverse that for no reason. Now, listen, if someone's blocking one side and you're in a hurry to get out and you go, I get that. I understand that. What I don't get is the number of people who just see exit and go out the entrance. And what's crazy is like we have a somewhat lengthy hallway. You kind of go through these, like it's those theft detector things or whatever you got to walk through. And there are people who will walk through the correct one. They'll go through the left to exit, and they're headed towards that exit, right? It's the exit door right in front of them, and they cross over. And like yesterday, I was going in to Walmart, and I'm walking in, and I'm going in the clearly marked entrance, and there's like 4 people. They're not together. There's like 4 or 5, like a crowd, not a crowd, but a big enough group of people that I can't even enter. And they're all coming towards me through the entrance or exiting through the entrance. And it's like, and in these moments, I say to myself, I'm like, you know what? Just do the opposite of what's logical, rational, and marked clearly. Just do the opposite, because that's what everyone else is doing. It seems that way to me. I'm going to start driving on the wrong side of the road pretty soon, because these things happen, and I'm just like, what the heck? So anyway, next week, that'll be next Thursday. Are you blocking the entire aisle? The crux of that article isn't just my silly frustration with this, but it's also the fact that now that we have Walmart employees shopping for like pickup orders and things like that, now that those people they're picking, they take those giant carts and they do it, and this behavior translates into the employee side, and that's when it gets really frustrating, because you got employees blocking the entire aisle. So that's what's going on the Substack, and yeah, check that out. And again, it's uncredible.me. So let's get into our weekly update. And before I get into the running aspect of it, this was just a crazy week for me. You guys remember from last week that I had the cold. By the way, I went back and I checked the audio on that episode, and I'm not sure if my cold was that bad that the audio came out kind of iffy, or if there was something wrong with the way I produced it. I'm not sure. We'll see this week. I am exclusively going to this microphone. I switched from the lapel because some of the camera tripods that I'm using don't accommodate that lapel. And this has been my worry when I started the podcast, was that this would fail. If I did an hour-long podcast, the computer would freeze and I'd lose all the audio. And I didn't want that to happen, so it was more of a backup. So I'm kind of committed to this now. But it's been a busy week. I'm actually recording this at 5:36 in the morning on Saturday. I usually do this on Friday mornings, but my kids were off of school. And listen, yesterday did not go good. We're not talking about the running just yet, but I've been having trouble with my car all week. Now, I drive a 2010 Mercury Milan. It's got 176,000 miles on it. So we've been pushing it to its limit this whole time. My son's been driving it since he was 16. He's 18 now. And we found the limit for that vehicle. We were told it would probably last about 2 years ago. And the body is just about gone. But over this course of this past week, we basically felt and watched and experienced the transmission failing. And we took that to a repair shop, which is also a junkyard, yesterday. And they did confirm that the transmission is shot. We're not going to get it repaired. But that's been added stress to this whole week. On top of that, so the good comes with the bad, right? So the car actually went bad yesterday morning when I was driving to my father's house to pick up my new desk. Now, I don't know if it's in camera, but my dad has been working on this desk for months. He's just been taking his time on it. He's retired. And finally got this new setup. I got a wider spread here so that I can kind of spread things out and get this setup looking just a little bit better. All that to say, we are improving things, but it's also been a very busy week, and we still got the running done. And I share all of that because when the name of the podcast is Uncredible, and I haven't gone back to this too much because I didn't want the podcast to just be constantly referencing average, regular people. It kind of just sort of seems like you'll figure it out. I mean, you can tell I'm in my basement. Oh, nope, big surprise there. And I want this thing to build and grow and become more professional, but also just remain normal, average, just a guy who goes to work and happens to do a podcast on the side. That's what I want it to be. So, but I don't want to just constantly be talking about the fact that I'm average. I want to talk about things in the world and what I'm doing every single day. And one of the things that I think is misunderstood or overlooked when you look at somebody who's got kids, who's working every single day, is just being able to do all the regular stuff, the regular everyday stuff, when the challenges pop up. So you come to this podcast and every week I share with you my running journey because that's just what I'm doing, right? I'm finding time. I shouldn't say I'm finding time. I'm making time to better my health, but also enjoy these races and running and this whole other aspect of my personal life. So I'm sharing that with you. And it's easy to look at that and be like, oh, well, I wish I had time, or it must be easy for you because I have to work or I have to do this. But what I want you to understand is that when you're uncredible, things like your car breaking down can be a reason to just stop, to just quit. I could pack up all these cameras. What am I doing all this for? And stop running, choose not to sign up for any more races. You know, I made a whole year's plan. That plan can be balled up in a ball, thrown in the trash can. I can delete everything off of the YouTube, the Spotify, and just stop doing it. I don't have to do it. But there is something about staying committed to these things that makes what we average people do uncredible. It's what makes it so I think it's just staying average and just, going through life and not doing anything that inspires us, that will suck the life out of you. It'll drain you out. And I think what I want to inspire people to do with this podcast, and I am doing myself, is to be the father, the husband, the worker, the person in your community, but also do the things you enjoy doing. And there is time for that. And this has been a rough week. Last week, I cut the running out completely because of the cold. That was a physical choice. I had put 8 to 9 weeks in of running. Before that, pretty much an unbroken series of a year of healthy activity, working, dieting, all that stuff. It was okay to take that week off. So coming back to a committed full week, it would have been easy to say, I took 1 week off. The Buffalo Marathon is not until, not for 10 more weeks. I can take a second week off. And that's when things start to spiral. That's when you fall into those ruts of routine where you give up on your dreams, you give up on your vision, and you just stop. And what makes average people uncredible is that they don't do that. They just decide they're going to keep going. And I found that true in running. Our quote of the week this week we'll get to later. Running is very much like life. There's moments where you're 7 miles into a 14-mile run. And you're like, I just ran 7 miles. Why do I have to do 14? Who am I trying to impress? What's the point? It's about you and your goals and your vision for yourself. It's about keeping your word to yourself. And so I share this before the running aspect of this, just to let you know that it's been a rough week in terms of, I had to take the car to the shop earlier this week and we had a CV axle changed. Thought we fixed the problem. Had some more noises coming out of the car a couple days later. Not good. Had to go pick up this desk, and I wanted to record the podcast yesterday, but I couldn't because halfway to picking up this desk, the transmission wrench comes on the car. Luckily, we were right there near the shop that could fix it or junk it, which is kind of like a 2-for-1. So we pulled in. We got it done. So I do want to get into our weekly update, but I wanted to give you that context because it's one thing to consistently show up in your everyday life. It's another thing to show up consistently when things don't go the way you expect them to. And that's when things get really, I would say, uncredible. Because you're doing the hard stuff you do day in and day out, and then you're adding to that pile. And that's where things get really, really interesting. All right, now let's get into the running weekly update. Let's get into the actual running aspect of it. Before I get into the miles that I logged and how this week went from just a purely running aspect, I did want to say I have signed up now for 4 races. Last night I took the time to sign up for my entire plan for Ohio. So I've got in July and August, I've got a marathon, half marathon, and 10K spread out over the course of about 4 weeks. I'm going to do all those races. So officially locked those in last night. By the way, if you see me looking up here, I have a new monitor that I can see a little bit better. So that's why I'm looking up. I'm not sure how that's going to play out on this camera, which hopefully will work this week. We'll see. Last week it cut out. So we're going to give it a try again. So going back to week 9, the end of week 9, that was last Saturday. Really good run. We ran 17 miles at a 10:30 pace, which was pretty good. I mean, when I set out to do the 17, I wasn't sure if I would complete it. It creates for the route that I have, it's roughly it's like 2 and change laps. So I have to do my normal route, which is like, depending on which little side streets I go down, I can turn it into about an 8-mile stretch. So like it ends up being like 7.5 the way I did it. But so that you get to 15 and now you have like not a full lap left, not a half a lap. And at the very end of each lap, there's this really steep hill that inevitably destroys my time. It's like, I don't know why it bothers me, but it's like I'll have 10 to 11 minute miles the whole way. And then I get to this hill and that's always like a 13-minute mile because I have to walk up that hill. I mean, it's super steep. Someday I take a lot of pictures on it and put it on Instagram because it's sometimes I'll stop my watch before I get to it because I'm like, this doesn't count. When I start doing hill repeats, I'm definitely going to use that hill as something to do hill repeats on, but haven't gotten to that point yet in my training. So, mainly because of the weather's just not been conducive to it. So, I can barely go down that hill when there's snow on it because it's so steep on foot. So, but we did 17 miles at 10:30 last week. And, I would say for the most part, that was a pretty successful run. I mean, I was really tight for the last 2 miles, but I'm trying to practice my fueling. And for whatever reason, when I get later into my run, I'm like, there's only 6 miles left, so I don't need to take this last gel. I don't know why I do that. I really don't know why I do that. And then it ends up making the end of the run kind of terrible. It feels terrible. My legs get stiff and tight. So part of the reason I'm extending that 1 mile out every single week is to hopefully, when we get to the marathon, be able to not have as much of that stiffness as we get into the post 20 mile section of the marathon, because that's what really destroyed me last year when I did my first marathon. It was right around mile 15 when things really started to cramp up on me. So it's encouraging that I'm able to get that far at that pace now. I'm still experiencing that tightness. So I'm like, in my head, I'm thinking, I don't know that I think I'm going to have to really slow things down if I feel like that with 10 miles to go or 9 miles to go. So it's good and bad. We're only halfway through the training block. So hopefully by the time we get to Buffalo, we'll be able to go a little faster, much longer, with less leg tightness that late in the run. Sunday is always a rest and reflect day. I write out my plan for the week. And then Monday and Tuesday, I did 6 miles. Monday, 7 miles. Tuesday. My plan was definitely to run further than that. On those days, I just chose not to mid-run. While for everyday use, I felt fine. When I got out on these runs, it's a little bit too much information, but when I got out on these runs, my sinuses would start to really clear out, which is a good thing, but it made me realize that I wasn't completely over the cold. And so getting oxygen was tough. Breathing right was difficult. So that was an interesting pair of days when I realized that just because your head and your body might feel good, that doesn't mean internally you're still 100%. And so I just I didn't really cut a whole lot out. The plan was to do like 8 and 9. I did 6 and 7. So it's not like a huge change, but what was different was the pacing. I definitely didn't run the pace I wanted to. And like Monday specifically was when I really could feel the physical drain of the cold, when on the run. Like I was running and I have to stop and walk, which is very rare for me. Typically I can go about 8 to 10 miles without even having to slow down, which Wednesday was my rest day. And then Thursday was an 8 miles at 9:30. This was somewhat motivated by a guy at work who came up to me on Wednesday night. I work nights, and he came up to me and he goes, did you see my run? I ran 3 miles at a 9:30 pace. And so I was like, there's a competitive side of me that was like, not bad. That's good. For him, that was good. He's just getting back into it. It was actually a great run for him. He's trying to build his mileage to a half marathon right now. And so he just started a couple weeks ago getting back into it. And so I was like, well, I'm going to go do 10 miles at 9:30 in my head. I just said that. I ended up doing 8. Again, I got to, this was definitely a mental thing. So it's another one of those things where 8 is, I can turn one of my laps in my run into 8 miles. I can't turn it into 10. And the idea of like starting a half or quarter of a lap of that was just like, I did 8 at 9:30. We'll just go home. So it definitely was a mental thing that kind of got me. So yeah. So that was a pretty good week overall. Today, rest was Friday, which was yesterday. And then I'm recording a day late. But today I'm going to try I think I have 18 miles on the plan. And we'll see if I get there. I have this run today is almost all about fueling. I really got to get the fueling down. I'm starting to incorporate some liquid fuel. So Gatorade, something in my water that I carry with me that will give me fuel as well. Because just using the gels for the whole time is, I guess I can do that, but I don't feel like it's enough. And I don't know that I can take as many gels as I think I would need to in a half or in a full marathon to feel. I don't know that my gut would be good for it. And I know they say to plan for that, but I'm trying to come up with different types of fuel that will be more convenient and easier to get throughout the race. So that's the plan for today. I don't know how it's going to go today because the weather here, last night it was super windy and the weather here got crazy. So we had like some 60-degree weather days, and now we're going on a 2-week stretch. It's going to be it's basically going to be 20s to 30s with snow, but not like thick snow, like an inch here, an inch there. So it's not going to be, terrain-wise, it won't be too bad. For me personally, after running all winter, it's probably not going to be too terrible in terms of cold. Although listening to the wind howl last night, I'm not real excited about that because, running in, I saw the weather report said 30 to 40 up to 60 mile an hour gusts. I don't want anything to do with that, but that's supposed to stop. And then I'm hoping I'll go out after that. So that's our week in running. Now let's go ahead and turn to the news and get our Uncredible take on that. And of course, what's going on in the news is this Iran-Israel-US war. And it's, as I've talked about in past weeks, last week specifically, it's getting extremely difficult to know what to believe. I'm listening to news sources, and what's interesting? I try to listen to what you might call independent media. I try to stay away from like CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, some of the big ones, because they're so Democrat, Republican leaning that it's just obvious they're biased. What I'm finding interesting is some of the what would be considered independent sources you find on like YouTube. Boy, when they latch on to an idea, like when they think they're sure of something, their colors definitely come out. And this is not the point of today's discussion, but man, pay attention to how when the pundits that you're listening to feel like they've got this thing figured out, how they talk, because you can find out real quickly when they want to turn left or right in their political leanings. Like they can keep it down the middle when they're unsure or the data isn't like 100% clear. But man, when they are sure of something, they lean all the way into it. And I've seen a lot of that this week in the news that I've been watching. But I wanted to talk about two things this week in terms of the uncredible aspect or the uncredible take of what's going on in the news, or at least what I'm seeing in the news. Another thing that I'm very aware of is one person's news is not another person's news. With AI and algorithms and social media, a lot of people are being fed what they want to hear or what they're generally involved with. And I don't think that's a good thing, but it's very hard to get out. Like if you're a Republican or you're a right-leaning person and you are constantly, liking Fox News posts or Fox News pundits posts, you're going to get more of that. And it's very hard to get outside of that and see, because what the algorithm will then show you from the other side is stuff that is what would be considered by that side crazy. So you'll start to, it's like confirmation bias all the way down the tunnel that you're looking at, and that tunnel being your cell phone or wherever you consume social media. And so this algorithm aspect is really interesting, but it's making it difficult. Like I might talk to one person and go, hey, did you hear about this, that, or the other? And they're going to go, no, I hadn't heard anything about that. And it's been all over my Facebook feed. I've obviously been paying attention to the Iran Israel conflict, which U.S. is involved with as well. And talk to people about that, and they're just like, yeah, I hadn't heard that much about it, but have you heard about this news story? And I'm like, no. So it's like what people are interested in, they're looking at, not the next person might not be seeing the same thing. And so we're actually getting kind of like personalized individual media, which is actually dividing us, because I might be very passionate about this thing, and then you're just like, dude, why does that matter? By the way, did you hear about this thing? And so we're just kind of like in different worlds, getting different types of information and being totally inundated with what we believe is the most important thing, confirming to us that it is the most important thing. So you might think that this one news story is just like crazy, it's the most important thing. You liked a few of those posts, and someone else is like, no. This is what's going on in the world, because that's all they're seeing. So that's, I'm very aware of that. But in terms of this, this war, and even that's interesting, there's the terminology war. The first thing that I wanted to talk about was the conversation about who's right in attacking whom. And what I put in my notes was Iran is defending itself from Israel, who's defending itself from Iran, who's defending itself from Israel. It's like there's this argument that they hit us first, so I get to hit them. And so depending on where you start history to justify your violence is where you're justified. And so you'll hear people say like, oh, well, Iran has been at war with Israel for 47 years or some crazy number. Or you'll hear, well, Israel's been bombing the Gaza Strip and been doing all these things for years, and Iran has just had to put up with it, and now they're standing up for themselves. And it's like, I guess it depends on where you cut the line, but they're both using the same rationale. It's like, we've been under attack by them this whole time. And it's like, this all is placed in the conversation of when is war justified? We're not talking about it in that way. We're just saying, like, we all seem to agree that a war of defense is understandable. If somebody breaks into your home, you should be able to defend it. But if someone broke into your home 40 years ago and you find him 40 years later, are you still allowed to perpetrate violence on him? Now, it's an unfair example, but what I'm trying to get at is, like, I guess on some level, you can always find some reason to perpetrate violence. So, I mean, and justify your act of violence. And obviously, you wouldn't be trying to justify it if you didn't think it was justified. And this is where it gets weird because, like, both sides of this war are arguing the exact same way for different facts, from different facts. So it's like, if you hear somebody who's a big, staunch Israel defender, they're going to say, well, Iran has been at war with Israel. They want to wipe Israel off the map. If you talk to somebody who's like an America First person, oh, they chant death to America. Like, if they chanted death to America one time, they would still be saying this. So we have to defend ourselves. It's like, but Iran's looking at it and going, well, we didn't do anything and you attacked us. And then, like, what we're doing right now is only going to continue that, whatever that is, right? So, like, for the next 20, 30, 40 years, Iran is going to look back on what we're doing now and say, well, you attacked us first. It's like an ongoing thing. And it got me thinking, like, there's that aspect of it. Like, who is defending themselves more justly? They both seem to have an argument that they're defending themselves, but which one is right? And then I was also thinking about the aspect of Congress never declared war, but all the language in the media, I shouldn't say all, a lot of the language in the media, when they're not correcting themselves, is war language. And I'm not just saying, like, if you're listening to left, we're going to get into what language is being used on both sides. But if you're listening to left, you only hear call to war on that side. No, the administration that never actually declared war calls it war. Like, Trump's calling it war. Pete Hegseth described it as war. I mean, Republican congressmen are calling it, yeah, it's a war, right? And when asked about that, they're like, well, I mean, it's targeted strikes. But there's no, like, real clear, and it's been going on for decades that the president has used this idea of defense as a reason for not going to Congress to declare war. And it's just sort of a way to get around that part of, going to Congress and getting permission. And it upsets the balance of powers in our government specifically, but also on a global scale. It's like how we look at what is a justified attack needs to be better defined. That's what I'm getting out of this, because, like, what does it mean in the global landscape to be at war? Like, what if I were to say to you, and I think this is true of every country. I'm speaking as somebody who's in America, but I would assume this is true of any country. If your municipal building, okay, we're just going to think locally in your town or your community. If your local municipal building got struck by a missile, who in any world would not assume or perceive that as an act of war, justifying them to then turn around and return the favor? Like, I think everybody would agree that, bro, that's out of line. We got to defend ourselves. You shot a missile. And it seems like, depending on how used to war a country is, what I defined as war just now, they are more like something like that would be like, oh, it's just one single targeted strike. It's no big deal. It's like, it's kind of a big deal. Like, on a micro level, it's kind of a big deal. Like, no. I mean, think about it this way. You don't hear of, you hear about getting rid of guns because they're dangerous. You don't hear about anyone shooting missiles. That's illegal. Okay, but I'm just saying, like, if you did, that's like, we all recognize, I think, that that's like a next level, right? And it's like when I look at what's going on in the conversation, it just sort of seems weird that there's not a global, or at least a country by country, clear definition of what war is. That like we all agree that even if you don't call it war, you don't say it war, that actions that fall under this area are war. Maybe there is something like that out there, but the way people talk about it, it's like there's no clear. If I say it was just a targeted strike, but then you lay what I did against a rubric that said, no, you might be calling it a targeted strike, but this is war, and it elevates it. That little matrix or whatever needs to exist, and it needs to be agreed upon and probably updated on a regular basis, because what's going on right now is just like crazy the way people are talking about, oh, it's a war, it's not a war, it's just targeted strikes. Like, it's bizarre. And so I got to thinking about it, and I was like, and it doesn't seem like it should matter, but when you take things from a global scale and you reduce them down to like an individual scale, it's like the rules change. So, but this is what I came up with. If I punch someone, legally speaking, that's assault, right? If I just walk up to somebody and punch them, that's assault. If I said, no, it wasn't assault, I was just defending myself, no, it's still assault, right? Even if you felt threatened. Like if I said, there was a guy walking down the street and it looked like he wanted to punch me, and I think he was going to punch me, and so I just acted in self-defense and preemptively punched him. Legally, all of that doesn't matter, right? All that thought process in my head, while true, right? It may be true that I felt afraid for my life. I thought this guy was going to do something. I created this story in my head where he was going to attack me. None of that legally, like if I was sitting in a court of law, would matter. They'd be like, we understand. Well, why did you feel that? Well, he had his hand in his pocket. And I thought he might have a gun, and all these reasons it was a long coat, and it was it was warm out. It was weird that he was wearing. All these reasons could be thrown out there, but you'd still go back and go, yeah, no, you still assaulted the guy, and then there would be disciplinary actions to follow. It seems like at a global level, everyone kind of agrees, and even the people who are doing it this time specifically agree this is war. So then why, like, what's the consequence in that case? And that's where it gets weird, because one of the things that starts to spiral out of control is when, America and Israel are doing this now for reasons they feel are justified. They consider it defensive. We'll talk about that in a minute as well, but they consider it defensive for actions way back when, or this little action or that little action. They don't seem to be clear on why they feel it's defensive. But what happens when, we'll say 15 years from now, the Ukraine-Russia war starts to pick up again? That conflict starts to gain some heat. And Russia decides, I think Ukraine is preparing to attack, so we take them over. Or vice versa, right? We think Russia's going to move on Ukraine, so we're going to attack them. The world community is going to have a hard time saying, hey, that's not right, when we're doing what we're doing right now with the U.S. and Israel. And the same could be said for China and Taiwan. China, if I were China right now, I'd be looking at this and going, oh, we believe that Taiwan is going to have targeted attacks, so we're just going to take them. Right? Oh, well, that would be frowned upon by the world community. Why? Based on what? Oh, we're not going to go to war. We're just going to do targeted strikes. You see what I'm saying? Like, so it's a really weird thing that's happening at the world scale. It's sort of like there's always been this understanding that there's this line in the sand that we don't cross, and it kind of feels like a line has been crossed. But nobody seems to want to say or admit that line's been crossed. And I'm not really sure that anyone ever explicitly wrote down that there was a line there. We just sort of all kind of assumed it was there. And now that it's being crossed, it's like, one side who supports it is like, oh, it's not a line being crossed. We always do this. And then the other side's like, yo, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing? That's not okay. So there's that aspect of it to where it seems like there needs to be and I don't even know if it needs to be a global type of a thing. Like each country could probably do it for themselves, where they define what is an act of war and then communicate that to other countries. So like, for example, the use of this type of force or this amount of damage or this type of missile or whatever. Like, because I think we would all agree that if one person from Iran or Israel went into the other country and shot somebody, we would go, that's horrific, that's criminal, it's wrong, but it's not an act of war. We wouldn't hold the whole country accountable for that. So that's weird, right? So I think country by country, we need to at least be defining what that is and what that looks like. Again, I don't know. It just, the way things are being talked about right now, it's like, it's bizarre because everyone knows this is war, but it's not war. It's like, what? And if it is war, there are legal things that have been, lines that have been crossed, like from an international standpoint. It's very bizarre, but there's also the fact that this has been done before. So it's very weird in that side of it. So the first thing I was going to mention was just that whole, putting that all into one little container and summing it up. There really needs to be a defining of terms, and not only in terms of what is war and what is considered war, but also in terms of like, what is defense? Like, America is claiming that they did a preemptive attack because they felt like that Iran could get a nuclear weapon and be dangerous. Maybe true, maybe not. Very weird way of doing that, but like, and they're trying to defend themselves because this country chants death to America. These are kind of the arguments you're hearing, or because of what happened 47 years ago. I kind of feel like there needs to be like a timeline, and I don't know that I don't know that emotionally you can say this, but I think legally, or from like how long does a country have to defend itself, right? And I'm not sure that I know the right answer to that, because it's like, when have you fully defended yourself, and when can it be said that the defense has occurred and finished for any single act, right? So like, pick a single act of aggression. We'll say what happened on October 7th when Iran attacked Israel. One of the big conversations up until recently has been, well, Israel has been just absolutely awful to them. Well, they should be able to defend themselves. Well, when does it go from defense to unbridled offensive violence? Okay. And let me paint a picture for you. A guy's walking. We'll do. There's a lot of these videos out there, so we'll use this as an example. So, you know, you got two kids in high school fighting, right? And you know how you can see these videos all over the place where the kids are filming and these kids are fighting, and inevitably it gets out of hand. And some of the more popular videos are the ones where the person who starts the attack loses the fight, gets what he has coming to him, right? People love that stuff. But I think everybody would agree, if a fight broke out and somebody defended themselves and successfully pushed somebody off of them, maybe threw a couple punches and that guy passed out, that, okay, it's over. You defended yourself. But when that guy passes out, if the other person jumps on him and starts punching him and punching him and punching him and punching him, I'm not saying you can say it's 15 punches or 10 punches or 8 punches, but what I'm saying is there's a point at which people start going, that just went from defense to offense. And you might even say he was in a fit of rage and he wasn't in his right mind because he got attacked and he was defending himself, but he lost control. But even in that situation, if he ends up killing that person who attacked him, that's probably going to be seen as some level of involuntary manslaughter or voluntary manslaughter. I'm not a legal expert, but even then, he's not going to get off scot-free, right? But change it a little bit and say, let's say a kid gets bullied his whole high school career. He grows up, starts lifting weights, goes in the military, comes out of the military, and he never got over that, right? That person who used to bully him all through high school, he never got over it. He sees that guy on the side of the road and decides he wants to start a fight. Is he preemptively defending himself for what happened in high school? And again, I'm just trying to use extreme examples to point out that, like, the arguments that I hear people talking about for this war, both sides are saying we're defending ourselves, but nobody can give me a good, clear definition of what is defense. When does defending go from defending to offending? Like, when does it become criminal to like if somebody's attacking you, I think we would all agree that whatever force is required to stop the attack is understood. But then, like, so somebody attacks you and you stop the attack and then you go attack his family. It's starting to get weird now, right? It's starting to get weird. Or you go and you attack his best friend and his brother and his dad. It's starting to get weird now, right? And so when you extrapolate that on the world stage, and it gets weird with the world stage because we're talking in terms of countries, not in individuals. But like, if the US drops a bomb on a country, we'll use Japan as an example, right? Could Japan now, today, say, oh, we're gonna launch some missiles over at the US because they've been at war with us since Pearl Harbor? Could we do that, right? Did we do enough in, like, when is the defense over? There's no timeline, there's no number of missiles, there's no number of deaths. There's no like real clearly defined, and I don't know that there can be, of when the defending needs to like not happen in terms of violence. It's like, 20 years later, is the person justified? Maybe, if they lived with that their whole life. You might say, you might like empathize with the person who struggled all their life because they were bullied. You'd be like, oh, well, I kind of see where they're coming from. But you wouldn't justify it. You wouldn't say that's okay. Like, the time for defense was over. And it just sort of seems kind of weird that we're both sides are using this excuse of defense, and nobody's willing to admit that this is a war, even though it's a war. And those are the two like legal things that we need in order at a worldwide scale to keep just countries from shooting missiles at each other all the time for no reason whatsoever. For seemingly no reason. I won't say no reason, because you can make up a reason apparently for just about anything. Now, along that same point, in terms of defining the terms of war and the terms of what does it mean to defend yourself and how far is too far with defending yourself, I've also noticed something about the news media and propaganda talking points. And I noticed something this week, and I was missing it initially because I thought I was listening to independent media, and I was listening to not mainstream media. But one thing that came up this week in the independent media that I was listening to was the right using this propaganda phrase over and over: short-term pain, long-term gain. And it's been used in the past. It's a common phrase. It's relatable, understandable, but they had tons of media outlets cranking out this phrase, short-term pain, long-term gain, talking about the war in Iran. And the idea is we're going to stay there as long as we need to, and we just want you to understand that this is going to be for your benefit somehow. We're not going to explain how, it just is. Trust us. And what I would consider independent or somewhat left-leaning media was saying, oh, this is going to go longer than they expect, and they don't know how long it's going to take, and they're worried, and justifiably so, that this war will continue, that it's just going to keep on going, and it's going to be forever war, so to speak, or regime change war that lasts 10 years. Despite saying it's not, we're getting phrases like this from the right and those who support the war: short-term pain, long-term gain. And I really don't like that propaganda stuff. Another one was 6 feet, 2 weeks to slow the spread during COVID. It's both sides do it. It's just whether or not we pick up on it. And the reason I want to talk about this particular one is because I was missing it. I was missing it at first, but it got repeated so much in the media that I was listening to that I was like, I do not ever remember. And maybe I didn't listen to enough media back during the Iraq War or the war in Afghanistan, which went on forever. I don't ever remember this phrase being used, and it is being used repeatedly. And I think I can safely say that if you're listening to media that supports the war, you're going to hear terms like short-term pain, long-term gain over and over and over. You're going to hear it. And if you're listening to the left-leaning, against the war, not supporting the war, you know what I've heard a lot of? War of choice. War of choice. It's almost like they can't get away from calling it that. It's like somebody's pumped it into the media that I was listening to where anytime they mention the war, they call it a war of choice. And this is a defined thing because there's a war of defense. Like I was defending myself, and then there's this thing called a war of choice, and it's a definition thing. But it's like that terminology is being used so much in media that opposes the war that I'm like, wow, they're just leaning into it. It's like they're inserting it at points that don't make sense. It's like, oh, and Donald Trump has started this war of choice. It's like, oh, well, Israel has embarked on a war of choice. And I'm like, I've never heard anyone talk about it. And it's a weird thing to say unless you're trying to embed it into people's minds that are watching your media, that this is an illegal war. And whether you believe that or not, I don't know which direction I lean, because I don't think the legal standards are there. I don't think the international community has been really well defined, as I just explained, in what they do. I think we've been doing stuff like this for decades and just letting it slide. But the media on the left, or independent media that does not support the war, is aggressively using these three words, war of choice. And I just wanted to share that with you because it's like, you got to be very aware of these propaganda talking points. And you'll catch it when somebody talks in a way that isn't normal, that isn't like an average everyday. I would never call, even if I knew that was a legal term, I would never in my everyday life talk to a coworker and say, well, Donald Trump has embarked on this war of choice. Just say war. What are you talking about? The only reason you're doing that is because down the road, mark my words, I hope I'm right about this, I hope I'm right about this, and I keep this podcast going for like another couple of years when the Democrats are in charge, because that's probably what's going to happen, because I'm fairly confident that what we have for the next decade is Democrats running on prosecuting Donald Trump as a war criminal because of him going on this war of choice. And it feels like the media is embedding that terminology into the psyche of the people who are listening. That's me going down my conspiracy side, but listen to some left-leaning news media, or I won't even say left-leaning, because I don't listen to left-leaning media. I listen to what tries to be objective media. And this phrase, war of choice, is everywhere, and it's getting worse. And it's just war of choice, war of choice, war of choice. So it's just interesting to me that you've got them both pushing their propaganda points, and we're sitting here listening to them feed it to us. So, yeah, that's my uncredible take for what's going on with the Iran-Israel war. I'm kind of curious how long this will dominate the news media cycle, because we're going on about 3 weeks now, I think, since the Epstein files kind of disappeared. And it doesn't seem like anything has been able to dominate the news media cycle this last couple of years for more than 2 to 3 weeks. And so I'm kind of curious how much longer. It's going to depend on how long the war goes on, how long this remains in the news media. But I'm curious to see how much more I'm going to be talking about it, doing a weekly podcast. I would have assumed by now that this would have kind of disappeared and something else would have emerged. But we're still hearing about it. We're still hearing about who bombed the school with the all-girls school in Iran. We're still hearing about all of that stuff. It's just still being pumped into the news media. So we'll see if it makes it another week. I'm curious. All right, let's get into our main topic through an uncredible lens. And I will admit that I have noticed that the news side has been taking a lot more of the time, but that's because what's been going on in the news has been interesting to me. And I do, like I said when I started that segment, I do think there needs to be a place for average people sharing their thoughts on that. Like I listen to a wide range of and a lot of stuff, but only as much as I can get my hands on, and only on account of the fact that I'm out running for hours on end, and I can let that stuff go through my earbuds. But I didn't want it to dominate the podcast, and the fact that it is doesn't bother me. Because like I said, I think we need uncredible takes. That average people are not experts, and we need people who don't have those talking points that I was just talking about, the propaganda points, and just share what they see from their perspective, from a regular person's perspective. So I think there's a place for that. So I'm just going to keep doing it. I do hate the fact that it takes over a large segment of the podcast, but that's where we're at right now. So the main topic today through the Uncredible lens, this is this struck me this week. Obviously, as I mentioned earlier, the car problems got me looking on Facebook Marketplace again for a new car. And I say a new car, a car, anything. I prefer to pay cash for something really cheap and just keep rolling with something that's kind of like a beater. No payments is the way I like to go. So it looks like I'm probably going to end up in payments. We'll see. But I'm trying to avoid that. But I noticed, I've never talked about this, and this is the most uncredible thing because regular people use Facebook Marketplace, or at least they used to. I don't know if they do anymore, to buy and sell cars, buy and sell TVs, buy and sell furniture. It's a common thing for people to do who are just trying to get by. And I realized, I asked a buddy at work, I said, have you ever sold or purchased on Facebook Marketplace? And he said no. And I think there's like a generation thing where like I'm sort of towards the top end of where people use Marketplace, and then there's like a bottom end where you use Facebook and TikTok. By the way, I didn't even know TikTok had a TikTok shop, but apparently you can buy that way too. But for me, going on Facebook Marketplace, finding somebody locally, that's like a really reasonable way to find good stuff cheap. At least it has been in the past. And I realized that like this is probably not something that everyone relates to, but I have both sold and bought on Facebook Marketplace fairly successfully throughout the years. Now, I don't run a business. It's just when something needed to be sold, a snowblower, a car, a TV, a crock pot that we don't want anymore, I'll throw it on Facebook Marketplace and sell it. I've sold some stuff for my parents too. A wood stove, for example, we sold on Facebook Marketplace. So I've done a lot, what I would consider to be a lot of selling and a lot of buying. And in the last, I think I'll say a year. We'll say a year, but maybe a little more than that. I've been looking for a good deal on a car. And I'm telling you, I don't know if this goes back to my conversation earlier in the episode where I was talking about like how I observe society now. But like if you get a message, first of all, if you're trying to sell something and somebody messages you about that something and they seem even remotely not scammy, isn't it appropriate to just reply? I don't understand it. Like there was a car that I found. It was $2,500. It was a little far away for me to drive, but I thought, with my car acting up, it wouldn't be too bad to at least look at it. So last week, when my car first started having troubles, I found this car, I sent a message on Facebook Marketplace, and I said something to the effect of, I'm interested in this car, but I do need to look at it. When would be a good time to do that? Nothing crazy. I didn't even do the thing where I'm going to talk about some like do's and don'ts, the things that frustrate me as a seller and buyer. But like, I didn't do any of the crazy things where I'm just like, oh, does it have this? Does it have that? Can you look under the car and send me more pictures? I didn't do any of the crazy stuff. All I said was, I'm interested. I'm just trying to get the conversation rolling. The next day, I sleep during the day. So I figure I'd go to bed, wake up to go to work, and I'll have a message. And then we'll go from there. I'll wake up to go to work, no message. No big deal, one day. The way I look at it, if I post something on Facebook to sell it, I'm excited to get a message. I'm delighted to say, hey, oh, cool, here's somebody who wants to buy it. I take the catch-all approach. I respond to everybody, and first come, first serve. I'm not sure how other people do it, but this individual didn't respond right away. It's okay. Maybe he had a busy day. Maybe he had a busy day like me. So no worries. Next day goes by. Well, still no message, but I noticed on Facebook Messenger, you can see when somebody looks at your message. I could see that he saw my message, but he didn't reply. And I thought, that's bizarre. And in terms of the way the week was going, I have a rest day on Wednesday from running. I have a rest day on Friday. My thought was if I drove up on Wednesday on my rest day, looked at the car and I liked it, I could go up on Friday and pick it up. That's my thought was I could have this deal closed by the end of the week if this guy's interested in selling it and the car's nice. I was pretty much sold on it. There wasn't much he had to do. So no response. Well, Wednesday rolls around. I'm kind of disappointed because I know this guy's looked at my message and hasn't responded. And this was the day that I would have liked to have, bought the car. I have the money. I'm ready to go. Like, let's do this. So thinking it's bizarre that he hasn't written me back, thought, you know what? I'll shoot him another message. So I said, is the car still for sale? ? like 3 days later. Now, keep in mind, I've sold on Marketplace, and it is kind of a weird thing when you're selling something and 3 people message you at once about the car or about the item you're selling. You feel this obligation to do like a first come, first serve kind of a thing. And so you read those messages and you're like, I was like, oh, I just told this guy to come see it. You don't want to let this guy off the hook, because if this guy comes and looks at it and doesn't like it or lowballs you, like sometimes you'll get people who are like, oh, I'm very interested. Okay, yeah, we can meet tomorrow, right? And then an hour later, another person comes in and goes, I'll give you $2,500 cash right now. Oh, shoot. Well, I kind of promised this guy we're going to go meet tomorrow. What I do in that situation is I say, well, I have someone looking at it tomorrow. If that falls through, you're next on my list. That's what I usually do. Just acknowledge that the message was sent. No worries. It's just people know how business works, I think. So I don't know how other people do it, but that's how I do it. And this guy just sort of letting my message rest there. So I thought, well, maybe he's got someone else coming to look at it. If that goes through, he's just going to drop me it's sold. But I got nothing. So I said, is it still for sale? Because I thought maybe another message would indicate to this individual that some kind of response would be appreciated. So, Wednesday goes by, Thursday goes by, now it's Friday. Well, I would have really liked to have heard about that car. And then my transmission goes on my car, so now I really would have liked to have heard about that car. But the guy never messaged me for a whole week. And it's like what? Going through the whole process of posting it, it's tedious, it's annoying, of posting an item for sale and then just not responding to people. It's just, I don't understand it. Like I said, maybe he's in the process of selling it and just didn't get back to me. I understand that too. Maybe he got hit with a bunch of scams the second he posted it and he just thinks everyone's scamming him now. Who knows? Who knows what the situation was? But it's just very bizarre, some of the behaviors that I've seen on Facebook. And because of that, it got me thinking, what are some of the things that I've noticed with Facebook Marketplace as a whole, as somebody who's sold quite a bit on there successfully, that I could share with regular people who might have a sofa that they want to get rid of, or they have a car that's kind of coming to the end of the life, maybe get some money out of that and use that as a down payment. I will say this. If you're selling cars specifically, I have seen some of the craziest stuff on Facebook, and I don't even know at this point if it's not just a comedic thing, but one of the favorite things that I see on a fairly regular basis is runs great, no issues, blown motor. Huh? None of those things are true. Now, I don't know if those are just scams or jokes, or I don't understand that one at all. Or it needs transmission work. Transmission slips a little. That car is not worth anything. It's worth going to the junkyard. You don't sell that unless it's like a 40-year-old classic and the body's worth something in that case. But if you've got a rusted out body, a blown transmission, you're done. It's over. You go to the junkyard, or you can go find the frame for a vehicle and put your engine in it, I guess, if you're that mechanically inclined. But if you were that mechanically inclined, wouldn't you just fix this one? Kind of weird to see those. And the prices for some of that stuff are crazy. It's like, if you have a price range of like $2,000, right? And you can find a fully functioning, fully inspected vehicle for $2,000, or cracked windshield, needs brakes, rotors, struts, like interior is completely cooked. It's like the price range of people's minds is very, very weird. Another thing that I found is people posting cars that need known repairs. Now, I understand that some people don't have the money to fix these things, but maybe at least say that. But one of the things that blows my mind is how many times I've seen cars that are like, needs new brakes and rotors, bought the parts, just need to be installed. Just install them, or have someone put them on and then raise the price by $500 and say no issues, new brakes. Like, the value of the selling item goes up significantly if you just do the work. Like, supplying your own parts to a person who's going to do the work themselves. Nobody wants that. I don't know anybody who wants that. I want to pick the parts myself if I'm going to do the change. I'm going to put these potentially defective parts in a car because this guy sold it to me and he already had them. That's crazy. That's insane. Like, nobody who does any kind of car work or anything like that wants anything to do. Take your parts back, keep your money, and if you're going to sell it that way, just sell it. But you bought all the parts, and here's, like, I was going to get to it but didn't get to it. Well, take your parts back, get your money back, and then sell it without the brakes being changed, and just post that. It's such a weird thing to do. And I already mentioned it, but if you're selling a vehicle, and like I just described, or if you're selling anything. I've mostly been successful with cars. I've sold like 5 vehicles, maybe 2 or 3 of my own, and then 2 or 3 of my parents' vehicles I've sold on there. And you gotta be responsive to people if you're trying to sell something. You will, and you have to be persistent. You will get people who are scammy. I remember one time I was selling a Hyundai Sonata. This was way back, going back to like 2008, maybe even earlier than that. Selling this 2004 Sonata. It had been in accidents, and I had repaired it, and it was good to go. And I had this. It was like I had it posted for like 25, maybe $3,000. I can't remember. And this person writes to me and says, "Would you trade for a TV?" Like, no. So you will get some of that when you're selling on Facebook Marketplace. You'll also get there are people out there who are just like, let's say you list your car for $6,000. You think it's worth that much. I'll give you $2,500. Sight unseen. No, you will not. Like, you want somebody who comes and looks at the car, meets you at a general location, test drives it, likes it, and can go through the product. You want somebody like that. You don't want people who are just trying to buy the product to turn it. Try to avoid those people unless the value's there and they're offering you what you want. It doesn't matter, but you have to weed through that as a seller and know that that's going to happen. You can't just like ghost everybody after you get frustrated with one person. And I think that's what happened with this individual. It's actually happened to me twice now, because when I planned the notes on this, I'd only had it happen once, but now it happened the second time. And I'm starting to think that maybe Facebook Marketplace is not a good place to go. I actually haven't used it in a couple of years. I thought it was still a good place to go for cars and furniture. I know people use it for furniture as well, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe let me know in the comments if I've gone way off the reservation on that, but maybe it's not a good place to go for cars anymore. But yeah, if you're selling, just respond to people. I mean, I can't wrap my mind around going through the work of posting an item and hoping to sell it and just not replying to people. I don't get that. And again, if you didn't, I will say this too. I do understand if somebody doesn't know where the messages are, because it's a whole, Facebook Messenger is not super great at making it clear where those messages are when you're selling. You kind of have to dig for that a little bit. So once you find out where it's at, it's easy. But I give grace for that, because if you didn't see the message, then I don't expect a response. But in the individual that I shared about earlier, he saw the message, just didn't respond. I don't understand that. And by the way, your response could be, I have 3 other people looking at this right now. I'll get back to you. At least they know where they stand in the situation. And if you're buying, I was talking to my parents this week, and there's a lot of scammers selling also on Facebook Marketplace. And as I mentioned already, don't trade. Oh, I can trade you a TV and a four-wheeler. The four-wheeler thing. I've had people all the time. I think every time I've tried to sell a car, at least one person offers me a four-wheeler on a trade. I don't want to sell your four-wheeler. Get the money. The stuff that we have to do this. We're not in a trade, that type of a situation. We're in a culture and in a society where we use cash to affect trades. We don't do physical trades. If I wanted a four-wheeler, I would sell my car and go buy one. I don't want yours. I don't want to trade my car for your four-wheeler so that I can sell your. It's just sell your own four-wheeler and use the money to buy the car, or drive your four-wheeler to work and get over it. But another thing that's frustrating with buyers is, like, if you're buying something, you need to have but in both cases you need to have a lot of communication. But man, nothing's more frustrating than when you schedule, like, hey, yeah, I can meet tomorrow at 8 a.m. at this location, and they give you the thumbs up, so you think all is good. You get up, you drive to that location. It's 8 a.m., 8:10, 8:15. Hey, where you at? They don't look at the message. I mean, I had one person one time selling to them. Meet me here, going to sell it, the whole thing. I show up, they don't show up. I see them look at my message. No response. I'm like, all right, I give up on it. Hours later, where are you at? I thought we were meeting. Or, oh, I'm so sorry. I saw your messages, but I slept in. So reply then when you see the message. Like, we can see that you saw the message, so just reply then. I just don't understand that. But if you're going to cancel a meeting, give time, give a heads up. Don't schedule a time when you're not comfortable. There's been a lot of times where I've tried to like go out of my way to like be super late at night or super early in the morning because that's what the person wanted. And they always end up canceling. And then I'm more frustrated because it's not in my time schedule. Kind of, be flexible, but at the same time, just be like, this is the time that I can do it. And this is what's convenient for me. Because you don't want to be rushing yourself when you're buying or selling. You want to have time to affect the transaction in a way that you feel comfortable with. Yeah. So that's about it for Facebook Marketplace. Just had some really weird experiences with that this week. And I think for those of us who are uncredible, who can't just go and buy brand new stuff all the time, it's a great place to sell some stuff that we're kind of over. It's a great place to find some quality stuff if you're doing your research and you're meeting in public places and all those safety things. It's a great place for that, and you can get some really good deals. At least I think so. I'm going to be looking at cards now, so I'll let you know how that goes. I'm also looking at Carvana, so we'll see how that goes if I go that route. I don't want to go that route because there's definitely going to be payments involved. But if I can't get anyone to respond to me on Facebook Marketplace and I can't find a decent used car, I'll probably have to go that route. All right, so we're going to skip the podcast feature this week with everything going on. I just didn't listen to any new podcasts this week, so I'm just going to just kind of leapfrog over that this week. If you know of any podcasts that you think are really great and I should listen to, shoot them over, comment, send me a link, whatever. I do try to bump into them along the way. I'm trying not to force it though, because I don't want to be scanning for a unique podcast just to shove into this location in this podcast. I want to find something sort of as I'm scrolling through, or somebody I follow on social media. I want it to pop up naturally. I want to listen to it, and I want to be able to genuinely say to you, it's worth your time, and support that person. So this week, no podcast feature. I will recommend Apologia. If you look that up, that's on, I don't know if they have Spotify. Yeah, Apologia Radio, I think they go by. I've been listening to some of their thoughts on, a couple weeks ago, we talked about religion and war and in the eschatology. I might talk about them next week. I watched something last night, and they may come up next week in the podcast, because if this stays in the news cycle, I may come back to this and critique a little bit of what Jeff Durbin said, but also agree with him on some stuff. But I definitely don't want this podcast to turn into a religious podcast either. But it really is a significant part of what's going on in Iran, this whole dispensational premillennialism, that whole religious, evangelical religious end times thing. It does play a significant role. And I'm excited that it is getting some news attention, because I think it's worthy of that attention, because I've been worried about it for a long time. But it being like a theological thing, I didn't think anyone cared about it. People are caring about it now, and they're realizing that it does, in fact, affect the way policy is being driven, particularly in the United States of America. So that's interesting. So let's start to wrap things up with our quote of the week. If this camera did not fail on me this week, this will work. And if it did, it will not. So the quote of the week, this is actually a longer one. I run because it's so symbolic of life. You have to drive yourself to overcome the obstacles. You might feel that you can't, but then you find your inner strength and realize you're capable of so much more than you thought. And it's a long quote, but it popped up in my little calendar, and I thought, running really is symbolic of life. I suppose this is by Arthur Blank, by the way. I forgot to put that in my notes. It really is symbolic of life. I highly encourage anybody who's listening to this who is stressed by work or stressed by life to run, because it really has a calming effect. And it forces you throughout the course of the run to deal with normal life experiences that you will face and gain this mental advantage over how your body reacts to stress. I don't know how to explain it fully, but you do go through this repeated process of, I want to quit, I'm not going to quit, I didn't quit, I can overcome. And again, I don't know how to explain it, but the longer the run gets, this kind of repeats itself. So like today, you might say, I can't run a mile, so run a half a mile. I promise you, if you go out there to run a half a mile or even walk walk is usually how it starts for people. When you hit that mile, you're going to go, I wasn't that bad. And you're going to go, maybe I can do 2. And depending on how motivated you are and how fatigued you are and physically fit you are or how physically fit you are not, you will keep going to a certain point. I'm at this point right now where I feel I never expected to go to the marathon level, and now I'm looking at doing 3 marathons this year. And on my schedule, I haven't signed up for it. I don't know if I'm going to sign up for it. I even told my son yesterday, I think I need to move that to next year. I'm starting to think about doing an ultra, and I never thought I would even consider doing a marathon. So, but I share all that to say that running is really symbolic of life. It forces you into this place where you have to overcome obstacles, and you get to this point where you feel like you can't do it, and then you do it. And going through that process, I think, is good for life in general. Because if you haven't practiced and experienced that mental game, you haven't played that mental game, when life comes at you, then you really don't believe you can do it. But when you have simulated the act of overcoming on purpose over and over, and listen, sometimes you simulate the act of failure too. Like, oh, I'm going to, like, in my head, I'm 50-50 on whether or not I'm going to get 18 miles today because of the cold, because of the wind. If I get 16, I'm simulating failure because I'm telling myself I'm doing 18, and I'll come up with all kinds of justifications, but I'll be simulating that. And I don't think people really get to simulate real life failures and successes and overcome very often anymore, where everything is so digital and on screen that to actually feel inside mentally the effect that it has on your body and the way your body reacts to these intrusive thoughts in your head when you get to mile 15 and you've got to go 3 more, when you're at mile 9 and you have to go 9 more. If you haven't experienced that when you're in the workplace, when you're in relationships, when you're dealing with your kids, all of those things become way more stressful because you're not simulating it in your everyday life. Also, it has great health benefits, but by simulating that, I think you get used to some of your body's responses to the fear of not being able to do something, for example. Like your boss comes to you and says, hey, I need you to do this. For some people, that could be crippling. For other people, it's like, for people who have simulated it, be like, I don't know if I can do that, but I can at least give it a go. And if they fail, they've simulated failure, so the failure is not as difficult to embrace and move forward from. So all of that is, when I look at running and I look at this quote of the week, all of that is super beneficial, and it goes well beyond the physical benefits of running to the emotional, mental benefits. So great quote of the week. Let's go ahead and close things out. As always, thanks for listening to the Uncredible Podcast. You can get the podcast, the articles, all that stuff on the Substack at uncredible.me. Like and subscribe if you're listening or watching on YouTube or Spotify. Every episode, like it, follow it, share it, all that stuff. Helps out. Right now, it's not very big, so it's probably good. So all these mistakes I'm making, great. Nobody's going to see it. Uncredible merch. Check out merch.uncredible.me. I think I mentioned last week there are 3 more options on there. I'm hoping to order some of those and wear them for my next couple episodes down the road. It takes, the shipping on that Redbubble is a little bit longer than you might appreciate. But this is one of my favorite. This was when I first got this one. I hated it. I was like, oh, that's not going to last. I thought this logo would come off, but it's held up. I'm going to run 18 miles in it today. So, so merch.uncredible.me. Some new products are up there. Follow on Instagram at Jeremy Lundmark. So thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And remember, stay uncredible.